With the definition of a system being an entity that maintains its existence through the mutual interaction of its parts, and at the same time producing characteristics that cannot be found in any of its parts alone, only in the whole and total, it's actually rather difficult to think about something that isn't a system. And we've had numerous discussions attempting to identify some things, and there are in fact things that you can consider that actually don't represent systems. If you think about a car, a car is an entity. It has a purpose of taking people from point A to point B. There are lots of additional purposes that people attach to it, though essentially it takes one from point A to point B. And this particular system has essential components and non-essential components. Those things that are part of the car, the automobile, that are not essential for it to serve its purpose to take one from point A to B are not essential parts. If you take the doors off of the car, it will still take you from point A to B, and therefore the doors are not essential. It's probably not as safe to drive the car without the doors, but so the doors, the windshield wipers, and the roof, and lots of things. Though there are essential components. If you take the wheels off of the car, it doesn't go anywhere. So if you think about the car as a system, the elements of it that enable it to serve its purpose, the purpose being an emergent characteristic of all of those parts interacting, there are essential components and non-essential components. The alarm clock, a clock is an entity which manages to keep time based upon the inner workings of the mechanism inside of it. You can take it all apart and you can study it intently and you can figure out how it manages to keep time, though you can't tell from studying the clock itself why it keeps why it keeps time in the increments it does. You have to study it in the context within which it was created, which is the rotation of the earth, to understand that there are 24 hours in a day and 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in a minute. And then you begin to understand why the clock keeps time to the extent that it does, or in the manner that it does. The planets revolving around the sun in orbits, it's the gravitational attraction between the sun and the planets that maintains them in the orbit, and the gravitational attraction between the moons that keep the individual moons in orbit around the planets. So the solar system itself maintains its existence. I'm not sure what one derives in terms of the overall purpose of the solar system. I mean, that it continues the way it does is beneficial to us, because if things weren't maintained in the orbits, we probably wouldn't survive for very long. This particular example is a contrived representation of a set of interactions meant to show that for a goal-seeking set of relationships where there's a desired water level and a current water level, an individual perceives a gap and then alters the faucet position to cause the water to flow to fill the glass. And as the glass fills, the gap gets smaller and smaller, and when there is sufficient water to agree with the desired water, there's no more gap, the faucet is closed, and the glass is full and the flow stops. It's the relationship of the elements which enables it to fill the glass and not overflow. It is only the interaction of all of those elements that enables it to accomplish that. If you think about water, water at room temperature is a liquid. It's composed of two elements, hydrogen and oxygen, both of which are gases at room temperature. So you could study hydrogen and oxygen at room temperature intently forever and never experience the property of wetness. It's not until such time as hydrogen oxygen form H2 hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom form H2O in a molecular form, and there are lots of them. Do you get to experience wetness, that being an emergent property of the interaction of those molecules with things around it. Water all by itself doesn't experience wetness. It needs to interact with something before that characteristic is experienced. I guess it's a lot like if the tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? Well, depends on how you define make a sound. A savings account in a bank is a similarly contrived example of a system whereby if you put money in a savings account, and it's an account where the bank is willing to pay you interest on leaving the money there based on a defined interest rate. Periodically they will compute an interest based upon that, the amount of principal and the interest rate, and add additional money to your account. It's a reinforcing structure whereby the principal grows over time, and that growth is an emergent characteristic that is not demonstrated by any of the individual components of that set of interactions. A set of bricks, simply laying on the ground, is just a pile of bricks, is typically not considered a system, because what purpose would you associate with that pile of bricks? If you take this pile of bricks and you stack them appropriately and use them to hold up the corner of a porch, the pile of bricks then has a purpose, would be considered a system, because if you pull one of the bricks out, the porch falls down. So it has a purpose, is more than just a pile of bricks. So depending upon the construct, the context, how it's employed, depends on whether you would consider it a system or not. And the point, or the question that I will leave you with to consider, is a cookie a system? We've discussed it rather extensively, and you can ponder it for a while. Would you consider a cookie that is baked in the oven and comes out and has a taste that can't be found in any of its individual parts, would you consider it a cookie? So I'll leave you to ponder that, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.